This video covers the last week or so of work where I finally got the dashboard out of the truck and onto my workbench. I was so excited, and I had a spare day because of Memorial Day. I tore the whole thing apart, basically swapped in a known good harness for the harness that had been chewed up, and got that pretty much all set up. It went pretty easily. It only took a couple of hours. The other thing I did this weekend was take the Scout on a 180-mile drive down to my father-in-law's house and back. Had a beautiful day for a drive down there, so I put the top down. It was about 85 degrees. Truck ran like a top. I wound up getting a sunburn. It was so nice. On the way home, I got on the road about 6, I think it was about maybe 6:30. Put the bikini top up. Beautiful weather, great ride home. She just ran just awesome. So I'm really happy about that. A couple of small things I want to deal with her, but she's just been great. The fix I made to the rear view mirror, I think it was last weekend, works great. I haven't hit it since then, so that's holding up really well. The other thing I started doing this weekend was tearing apart one of the spare C-Series doors. I've seen a couple of how-tos online. They're typically, it's old school forum format, so it's a bunch of photos and somebody's write-up. I'm going to do mine as a video and just step people through it as much as I can, because I haven't seen that yet for a C-Series truck. I'm about a quarter of the way through that. I've got some of the stuff off of it, but I'm sort of at a stopping point. I've got to figure out how to get the wing window tracks out and a couple of other things. So I'll post that up in a couple of weeks when it's done. Anyway, this video is going to cover the work on the dashboard that I got done this weekend. What follows here is another time-lapse of me under the dashboard, disconnecting things, test fitting things, pulling the dashboard up, just trying to figure out what was still connected and troubleshoot a bunch of different problems. This took several days. What I've done today is mark and disconnect the wires to the windshield wiper. There are 3 wires that go to the back of the switch. They go directly through the bulkhead and they go directly to the motor. So it's basically, you would have to disconnect the motor and feed it somehow through the dashboard. So you got to take those wires off of the switch to get the dashboard off. The other thing I did was I got the foot switch for the high beams. I finally got those bolts broken and out. And while I was at it, I doused that whole section of the floor and the bulkhead right there with some rust encapsulator, some rust converter, I mean, just until I can get in there later on and clean it up or cut it out or do whatever I'm going to do. I think I remember saying before, but I'll say it again, this whole section of the floor that I'm actually sitting on, you can see where it was sort of crudely patched in there. You can especially see it over there. I'm going to cut this out again and redo it, I think. I may leave it, I don't know. It seems to be okay. If I do anything, I'm going to basically cut out a small section over there and just close that area up because there's a bit of rust at the foot there. This floor is, I guess it's fine, but it needs to be ground again and it needs to be sealed if I am going to keep it. So we'll see what happens. This side of the floor definitely needs to get done, but that'll be another day. Next, I'm going to see if I can chase down more of these wires under here and just sort of slowly disconnect things until this thing comes out. At this point, I was really trying to figure out what all those brake controller lines were doing. They were spliced in, stuff was hacked in all over the place. It was really kind of a mess under there. Something I'm probably going to wind up having to do is taking this brake controller out finally, which means I've got to get a block-off nut for the master cylinder up front. That shouldn't be too hard to do. I've got a bundle of wires here that are all connected to this nonsense. I've got to basically figure out what they are connected to and cut those off. I've got 2 of these bulkhead connectors out. I wasn't able to save the grommets. The grommets are toast, so I've got to figure out what I'm going to do about that. It was at this point that I put a GoPro on my head so I could record what I was working on, right in front of my hands. And I didn't realize that the GoPro was facing backwards the whole time. So I have about an hour of footage of the top of the truck in the sky. Here's the damage as it stands. This is getting closer. I've gotten most of the bulkhead connectors out, not without a fight. They were tough, but they did come out. I've got to get the big bulkhead connector out now, so I'm going to get a piece of wood. I'm going to push it forward because it looks like the smaller part of it is on this side and the larger part is on the other side. I've nuked these smaller ones, so I'm going to have to see if I can find other ones. But I'm going to try to push that one out, and then there's only just a few more connections up under here that I've got to try to get out before this whole thing will come out. You can see here that the encapsulator, or excuse me, the converter that I put on here looks like it's doing its job, which is good. Once the dashboard is out, I'll get the rest of this. I'll probably wire reel it and clean it up even better, but for now it's stopped. You can see that incredible tinfoil job they did sealing up that patch. I'm going to have to build some kind of a rubber grommet or something to put up in there to clean that up, but we'll worry about that later. This bulkhead connector is now out. What I wound up doing was taking a piece of wood and actually sort of gently tapping it from the other side this way, popping this out this way, and then what I am doing now is basically taking the grommet and pushing the grommet back through, and then that should allow me to push that whole thing backwards into the truck. So looks like all the grommets are, all of the bulkhead connectors and grommets are now disconnected from the truck. In order to get the brake controller stuff out of this, I unwrapped a whole bunch of crap off of this brake controller, and I can't even tell you what I'm looking at here. There are miles of this shit speaker wire all through this truck. This is some sort of cobbled up situation with like weird splices and connectors and other stuff that I just can't even figure out. So I'm going to steal a line from somebody else on YouTube and do the right thing and just probably rip all of this out, because the majority of this stuff doesn't go anywhere. I'm just going to try to figure out where the live wire is that goes to this controller. It looks like it's this green line and this black line. This red line doesn't go anywhere. This red line is spliced into this green line. And so after all that nonsense, here's the moment of truth. I finally realized that I was right at the end, and it was just a couple of wires at the very far left there that I had to disconnect, and everything was ready to come out. And at this point, I'm just screwing the bezel back in so it doesn't fall on my lap. Oh, thank Christ. The dashboard is out. Here is what we are looking at. You can see my incredible patch job there. I've got to do some work on that to clean that up from this side. That shouldn't be too hard. Underneath does not look bad at all. The underside of the dash is in great shape. The rest of the firewall is in really good shape. Everything looks clean. Not a whole lot to report here. Some of the wire harnesses look a little crispy, but I don't think it's anything that we can't deal with. This one being the worst. I wonder if I can find another one from Scout Connection before I put all this back in. We'll see. A couple of things I've got to look at is I'm going to clean off the firewall and see if I can get a new pad to put on the front of this thing. I've got to figure out what is going on here. That is a bodge job somebody did. They basically welded this thing back together. I've actually got a spare one of these from the green truck that I can replace if I need to. My hoses are shot, so I've got to get new hoses in here. Actually got to mount that back up where it belongs, which is all the way up there. I'm going to see if I need 1, 2, 3 grommets. The big one that goes to the big bulkhead connector right there came out clean. The 2 small ones are shot, so I've got to see, or excuse me, the 3 small ones are shot, so I've got to see if I can get new ones of those. I've got to get a block-off plate for the other side of the brake controller, and I'll take the brake controller out. And yeah, just clean up everything else. I mean, backside of that's looking good. I'm going to hit that with a lot more seam sealer and get it painted and cleaned up so it looks good. Here it is on the ground. Looks pretty clean. Let me flip it over a little bit. I don't want to lay it on its face, but I can at least look at the backside. Backside doesn't look too bad. So I can take this into the basement and start swapping out all of the stuff with the good side. So that's good news. Glad to have that out finally. God. Because I'm impatient and I wanted to see how this would look, I started laying the new wiring harness in here. Started out by putting in the fuse panel just to see if the fuse panel is going to work. Goes in perfectly. Looks just like the other one there, but it does fit in there perfectly. Started laying these wires in. This goes all the way out to the bulkhead. This tucks in here. Everything is lining up perfectly so far. This element right here, so this is marked for the heater light, which is this guy right here. One of the things I've got to do is figure out how to disconnect these clips and hook them into these, because these clips are different, as you can see here. I've got a whole set of clips in the basement, or the disconnectors in the basement. I got to figure out how that works. So that's a little homework I've got to do. And then I've got to clean and degrease and then shoot these with a nice film of WD-40 or something, because they're all sort of greasy and they need to be cleaned up before I put all this back in. I'm going to clean the back of this thing too and just get it all looking nice and everything. But so far, it's looking really good. All of the wiring sections that are supposed to be branching off are in exactly the right places, so it's looking really good so far. It's just a matter of finding the right connections, putting them in, and taking the crap out that I don't need, because there's a lot of stuff that's hacked into the original wiring loom that shouldn't be here. It's for all of those crazy trailer lights and other crap that they hacked in, and I'm actually quite looking forward to getting rid of a lot of that stuff. You can see here, this is what I had. This is what this whole thing is for. I am so psyched to get this thing wired into the truck. I can't even tell you. So first thing I did was to splice in a connector for the first light I've got here. I've got a couple of these. I've got a box of these. They're Amazon seal wire connectors. So basically what I'm doing is I'm using the small ones, doing a connector, and then I'm also doing heat shrink over top of that, even though theoretically these are heat shrink, just to get a nice good seal. I've got that in there. I've got the heater, it's the heater power wire going in here, and I'm just sort of slowly trying to figure out what to hit next, very carefully through this whole thing. Just trying to figure out what's in here and what needs to come out before I go ripping everything out. I do know that I can pull this little switch out over here, because this is for some switch that jumped into a wire to an inline fuse. I will never know what it went for, but it can come out easily. This one is the wiper, I believe, and I've got the 2 wiper colors set here, and then it just is a power line that comes in. So I know I'm going to leave these 2 on until this whole thing goes back in. I'll basically just clean up the fuses with, I've got some electroclean here, and I'll clean up all of these connections, make sure they're all nice and neat, and then clip that back in place. There are a bunch of jump wires up here. Well, actually, there's one that I can see right here. This is a jumped wire from the dash light. I remember, if I am doing this correctly, this, I believe, is one of the turn signals, but they jumped the lead to the oil sensor and then that goes and grounds here, and then this is the plug-in for the oil sensor. I don't really know what the story is there, so I've got to inquire into that. It might be that I jump into a different line, because I know that the oil sensor does work, which is nice. And then I've got a whole ton of these connectors that I've got to sort out. I just basically follow all of the directions that I got from Scout Connection on that. I've got to trace down what these go to and just basically work my way over here, and then I'll have to pull the switch off and replace that. What I might actually do is, I've got a new switch in the box. I might take my time and figure out what all these lines go to and put the new switch in. We'll see how that goes. And then this is the light switch, and I've got to sort this whole thing out, all of these connectors up top here, which I also have. So slow going, but I think I can probably get the rest of this thing knocked out probably tomorrow. And then the other nice thing is that I've got the second one over here, so if I need spares of anything, I've got another light switch, I've got other gauges and things. So I'll just slowly take my time and make sure that I'm doing this right. I am currently working right now on the two last pieces over here. That's the amp gauge, and I think I've forgotten what this one is. This whole side is pretty much in. The only thing I've got to do is wire in this special bulb that went in with the aftermarket oil gauge. I'm going to keep the oil gauge, so I just need to basically splice in a new piece here from I think it's this wire here. Is it that one? Yeah, it's this one here. This one just loops over. Those two work together. No big deal there. I'm ordering from Amazon a gross of these new bulbs. I'm basically going to drop the thing in place, not hook it up, and then test all the bulbs out and make sure all the bulbs work before I screw everything in place, just to make sure all these connections work. But again, I'm using Electric Clean to clean up as much of this as I can. The other thing that I'm noticing here is the linkage. One of the linkages, I think this is for the blower, the flapper valve on the passenger side. Where is that? Oh, there's the control. I slide this control all the way over. This wire basically wants to come off. It wants to pop off this post, like it's ready to pop off that post. So I think what I've got to do is figure out how to take that off and bend it, or do something to get it to want to stay up and not immediately want to bend down. I want to do that before, because this was not actually hooked up when I got the truck. It had already come off, and I would assume somebody had gotten sick of having to get underneath there through all of the other wires and everything and loop this back onto the post. So I got to figure out what's going on there. So I'm at that fantastic part where I'm trying to get the knob off the front of the light switch, and as most people know who have old trucks, there's a little button on the top here. You push this down, and theoretically once you push this down, it releases this. This whole thing comes out as a long piece, and there's like a notch in the shaft that pushing this button down releases. As with every other one of these that I've ever worked on, I can't get this damn thing to release. So I am currently fighting that, trying to get that to move right now. I figure I should actually explain what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this thing. These are 3 different headlight switches that I've got for Scouts. The idea is basically the same. All the electronics go up here. There is a button on the back here that you basically push down. Theoretically, you're supposed to be able to push this down, and this whole thing is supposed to be able to slide out. And I'll show you. This one I've already gotten loose. You would basically push this, and this whole thing would come out, and it looks like this. There's like a little notch here at the very end that hooks into something that basically this part captures. I think I just remembered how this works. Just trying to do something different. I pulled the notch off of here, the retaining clip off of here, which would be really hard if you didn't have a set of angled needle nose pliers. I was lucky enough to basically get this off. Then I pulled this as far out as it would go, pushed the button down, and it came undone. So I think, if I remember correctly now, that's the trick to this, is basically you have to pull it all the way out, then push the button, and then it'll come out even a little bit more. You have to sort of jimmy it, and then it'll come out some more. This is cleaned up now. I've got all the contacts good and clean. I'll probably hit them with just a little bit of sandpaper. I already hit them with this wire brush, but I just want to get them really clean, and then I'll put this back in, and we will then work on getting the key and the ignition switch in place. Looks like I got everything in place now. All right, so going from the passenger side to the driver's side, this is the bulkhead connector. This is the entire fuse panel, which is great. These random wires, so this is the brake switch connector. This is one of the bulkhead connectors that goes up on the far left-hand side, or excuse me, this is the middle side. We got our flasher unit here. This is for a panel light, so it's a quick disconnect for a panel light. This is for the turn signals. This is all the stuff that comes off of the steering wheel. This is the horn button. Okay, that's fine. We got the wiper stuff down here. These two are two wires that come directly from the wiper motor itself. This is still loose from the oil pressure. I've got to jump this wire over to here. Find a nice way to do that. I'm still trying to figure that out. And then this is actually the original lead from the oil, or to the oil. This would normally, if it was a regular international oil gauge, it would go right here, and then this one would go over here. What else do we have loose? This is one of the only ones I can't figure out. It's marked as speedo dial, but I've already got a light on the speedo dial. It's right there. That's this one, speedo light. So I've got to figure out what that's all about. There's only two spots for lights on here. One of those is the high beam light right there. So, we'll figure that out when we get to it. And then we come over here. We've got one light that comes off of here, 38A. This actually hooks up to dome lights. So there's another dome light that comes off of this. And then there are two more dome lights here. This basically goes out and then up the pillar to dome lights over top. So I know I've got those in my truck. I can basically just get new connectors and hook those up. That should be no problem. All of the rest of the stuff is ready to go. This switch is cleaned out. This is new. I've just spent some time cleaning up all the dirt out of this thing. So the back of this looks good. The other thing that I did was fix this. I had mentioned this wasn't working correctly earlier. When I was moving this back and forth, it wanted to hop off of that post, and now it's on there nice and firm. What I basically did was pull it off, bend the wire up, bend the actual wire upwards, away from, or I should say towards this panel, and then I also used the piece of wire to lever in behind the mount, because what was happening was the mount was actually pushing the actual wire outwards this way, and I wanted it to sit back more towards this thing. So that's in. That's not going to come off now. Everything else is good. I've got this piece bent under here so that when the ashtray comes in, it's not going to hit this wire. It's interesting when you look at the newer ones, this entire wire bundle is longer, and it goes actually up over top of the radio panel. So that's kind of interesting. And that also brings up another interesting thought. This had a radio. I don't see one in here now. I'm gonna have to figure out why there's no provision for that in here. If I'm reading this correctly, this wire loom goes up underneath the dash here, and this is a pigtail, which I can only assume would go to a radio of some kind. Number on this is 102A. That traces all the way back down here 102A, which goes down to the 102 fuse panel right there. And what that corresponds to is actually the heater fuse on the front side of the dash. So if I want to jump a wire to my radio, I can basically plug it in on that side, come around here, and feed power up this way. The only thing I don't know is that if it's switched to the ignition or not, which I kind of doubt it would be. So I'll have to read up on how to do that in order to add a radio later on. Because I do have the radio out of this, which is an original international radio. Here's what the underside of the dash looks like without the dash in place. You can see the repairs that I made last fall. They're all looking, I mean, they look as good as I can get them for smearing really crappy seam sealer all over everything. I'm going to clean that all up. I don't like the way that looks. I don't like the way it turned out, and I want to definitely paint it. This is all weld through primer that I hit it with, but there's a lot of cleaning up I want to do here. I just don't like that. What else can I show you here? This is the this up here is the defrost vent. I've got to screw this back in place. I need a new vent for this side, and I actually needed a new vent for that side because both of mine fell apart after I took them out. The middle section looks really good. All the sheet metal back there is in really good shape. I mean, it's actually, the firewall on this thing is better than in my Scout. I had a couple of little tiny places where the windshield was leaking in my Scout, and this never did. This all looks fine. I've got the connector on my piece for this. This is the horn button. That's all fine and good. This has got to come out. I need to get a block off nut for this at the store this week for the brake cylinder side, so I can just disconnect this, pull it through, and get it out of here because I'm not going to use it. Don't need it. This is the oil lead for the oil pressure gauge. The oil pressure gauge, now that I'm looking at it, has got a couple of pieces of plastic on the inside of the gauge, so I don't know what I'm going to do with that. As I recall, it was working when I had the truck running. If those pieces of plastic don't get in the way of the gauge, keep it. If it's not working anymore, I'll toss it and swap in the one that I had from my truck, the green truck. You can see on this side the other part of where I did the repairs. Again, it's got all get cleaned up. I need to probably wire wheel it, put new seam sealer on it, and close it up. Just get it all prepped and ready. And that's basically it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see about taking this unit out because I want to put a new pad. This is the original pad from the original truck. I want to see about putting a new pad in behind here to hopefully make this thing a little bit more livable in the summertime. I'm not going to do anything with this part of the floor, but I think I am going to wind up cutting out a section over there, and I'll put in a new floor over here, but I don't need this off of here to do that. And then I got to figure out how to get this weird crap off of here. I don't know what this is, but some sort of looks like adhesive for the original carpet. I want to get that out of here and get this all shiny and clean. Don't need this out of here for that either. So that's where we stand. Got a couple of things, couple of parts I need for the dash itself. Spend next weekend maybe cleaning this stuff up on either side, and if I get all that stuff in place, I will see if I can put this thing back together maybe in a week or two. This is the radio from the green truck. I've taken the knobs and everything off just to see what it would take to put it in my truck, and unfortunately my truck was cut for a standard single DIN radio of some kind, and so this one, you know, this block off plate is not going to work. I would have to find somebody with a block off plate, either that it was made for originally one of these radios, or a clean block off plate, and I'd have to actually cut it, which it's kind of sucks, but you know, I really want to use this cool old radio if I can. I don't know that it's actually working the way that it should. It doesn't feel like these are the presets are working, but you know, I would definitely love to use this thing. Just a thought. Just figured I'd dig it out and see. Still pretty cool. If you've made it this far in the video, you might be interested in some merch I've got for sale on threadless.com to keep this project going. I'll put a link down below in the description. Thanks for watching.